Can you imagine it? Imagination is crucial to a vital and alive spiritual life. But how often do people say things like, that's only your imagination? Or, there you go again, just imagining things. And sure, we need people, get your head out of the clouds. And daydreamers at school or at work can feel like they're wasting the time of those who are more sober and hardworking. And we need people who can get things done. But don't we also need people who can imagine what's never been done before? One time at the dedication of a magnificent new building, the master of ceremonies lamented that the architect had died before she could see her brilliant work complete. Isn't it a shame that she couldn't see her work finished? And a wise soul in the audience said, but she did see it. That's why it's here. And we need people who can picture what most of us could never imagine. So Paul said to the small Christian community, beleaguered community in Rome, if we see what we hope for, that isn't hope. Who hopes for what they already see? So, you might have said, you're not being imaginative enough. Give yourself permission to dream bigger dreams. Paul probably wouldn't have said it that way, because he's a pretty serious guy. But you know what? Then again, he wouldn't have stood up against such tremendous persecution and imprisonments and sailed through dangerous seas to spread the gospel if he didn't see what didn't exist. In our passage, Paul then adds, if we hope for what we don't see, we wait for it with patience. To wait in hope. Not knowing actually exactly what it is we're waiting for. Because sometimes that's all we can do. However, I would say that by the example of Paul's own life, that hoping isn't enough. While we're waiting, are you getting ready? You putting in the work or just wasting time? Because you see, back at that dedication of the architect's magnificent new building, she did see it, that's why it's here. It's only half the story. Yes, we need people who can picture what most of us could never imagine. We also need people to build it, right? And others who, for example, know how to finance it and fundraise for it. And the list of people now keeps growing, like people who bring lunch to the workers and people who teach the next generation of dreamers and builders and so forth. And that's why we must imagine and build together. And that's what I celebrate here today. Before we ever did it, someone visualized tables in our parking lot covered with boxes of big green heads of broccoli and celery sticks and cases of bright red peppers and long orange sticks of carrots. Someone saw this and thought, we could help feed our neighbors. One of my favorite lines in the communion liturgy says, we come in remembrance and celebration of the gift of Jesus Christ, whom you sent in the fullness of time to be the good news. So Jesus was born, could only be born when the time was right. In the fullness of time, which we don't control, for which we can sometimes only wait. But in the fullness of time, volunteers who might not have known, they've been waiting for just such a time, just such an opportunity, jumped right in. And now, because someone saw it first, every Tuesday you can see volunteers show up to roll and carry out tables and set them up. And then you see volunteers unload $1,000 worth of produce every month from a red pickup truck full of cases of fruit and fresh vegetables. And they lift those heavy boxes onto tables. And then still more volunteers walk up and down tables, adding all those items, plus potatoes and onions and protein and so much more, to fill 150 grocery bags, handed to one person at a time Plus, there's another side table with cabbages the size of human heads. And why not add a little extra hospitality to it? So this past Tuesday, we offered cups of coffee and pieces of pumpkin pie for our 100-plus guests. And then all of it has to be torn down and put away and preparations made to do it again next month. And it's a lot of work. Right? It's a lot of work. And it's only possible because we do it together. Combining physical labor and financial contributions and prayer. But first, because someone imagined it and got ready for when the time was right. Long before it was built, Mr. Green and Reverend White saw a 13-story tower sitting right on the corner over there. Long before it was built, they saw it. And church members embraced their vision to sponsor safe, affordable housing for low-income seniors and continue to serve for decades as the board of directors to steward this precious legacy, which might have been it. I mean, a sufficient enough response to the need for low-income housing, about which we could proudly say, look what we've done. But today, this board of our church members and community partners has imagined what we can yet do. And we picture a rainbow of manners. We got green. We add blue and red and yellow and orange and purple, and maybe not literally those colors, but our real participation in building 5,000 more units of housing over the next 20 years. And you know what? That seems like, get your head out of the clouds. Totally. It's definitely a together thing, right? I mean, people who bring their experience with money and finances, and others who understand housing development, and others who operate with a business sense, and others who operate with other skills unrelated to money. All of us holding tight to a mission and who pray. You know what? We have never started a meeting without first praying. In 1962, Reverend Jerry McLean and members of First Congregational Church downtown San Diego at 6th and A began to think about what to do with their historic structure because the fire department had declared it unsafe. And he proposed tearing the church down and constructing on that spot a 24-story affordable senior apartment building with underground parking and a church on top. Up on top. And the church on top part wasn't approved. Imagine the long wait for the elevator. The sanctuary was relocated to the first floors, but the rest of the project, scaled down to 17 floors, moved forward, secured a government loan, and news appeared in the San Diego Evening Tribune on January 15th, 1965. But alas, at just the wrong time, that government program ran out of money, and the whole project died. But not the idea. 5 years after Reverend McLean's initial idea, a new committee was formed, 1967, to negotiate with HUD to build First Congregational Memorial Tower. And the author of the history of the tower wrote, "One could never relate, nor could most people ever imagine all the details, evasions, rejections, revisions of red tape that were encountered as the possibility of building was pursued." Finally, in 1972, after they sold the land downtown, they bought land on Park Boulevard just north of Balboa Park. 10 years, you think things move slow, 10 years after the committee was formed, a loan was finally approved in 1977, and work on the 100-unit, 13-story tower was completed in 1978. And if you haven't driven down Park Boulevard and looked over, that's part of our legacy. And sadly, Reverend McLean died in 1971. And he didn't live to see his vision completed, except, of course, that he did, right? That's why it's there. So in the meantime, their downtown tower plan rejected, the church considered relocating, but decided San Diego didn't need another UCC church, and it would be best to join an existing congregation. And they just so happened to choose one of the churches that they themselves had helped to start in 1911 in Mission Hills, when it was the end of the trolley line and there was nothing here. The newly merged, which just so happened, chose this church, just so happened to have opened its own senior tower in 1969. So the newly merged congregations took on the rather long name of Mission Hills First Congregational Church until the 1980s, when the name was simplified to Mission Hills UCC. Danger of which is you lose the name, you forget who they are and who we are. And just this week, following the example of Green Manor, the current members of the church and I, who serve as the board of directors of First Congregational Memorial Tower, have decided we're going to begin imagining how to expand our legacy too. Exciting times. Whoever first imagined that we would build a house in Tijuana every year? Or that we could? And how many people has it taken every year to nail all those walls together who made that idea happen, in addition to raising all the money every year needed to build those houses? And who first imagined El Nido, an apartment complex for women and their children fleeing domestic violence, each unit sponsored by a church, including our church? And given the vibrancy of our ministry with children, youth, and families, a whole new ministry was imagined about this time by Wally and Laura Borschel. It was the fullness of time kind of thing. They gathered together a team who did an incredible amount of work on surveys and focus groups, which resulted in amazing programming already, like the Second Saturday series and this handrail, which helps older people walk up, or anyone who needs help. And it's also a fun trick for children on their way up for the children's message. And who would have thought? One of the funnest things we did this year was Kim Antos's idea we should have a church sock hop along with homecoming. And people in poodle skirts who had graduated all the way from 1959 along dancing with people who will graduate in 2039. I've always had a dream to take people on a civil rights pilgrimage to Montgomery, Birmingham, Selma, and I've been waiting for the right time. Thanks to someone else taking on the logistics, we're going to go in September. Thanks to David J. for showing up at exactly the right time. It's going to be an amazing, transformative opportunity. And let me know if you're interested in going. We'll be making our commitments in the new year. And I could keep going. I mean, there's a whole lot more I could say. And I also want to remind us, we're not just looking to be busy, right? Each of these carefully thought of as means to embody our mission of going deeper with our faith and building deeper relationships across all generations and having a greater impact. But deeper faith is first. And it's out of faith and relationship that impact grows. Otherwise, the impacts that I've mentioned could not be sustained. And neither could they be sustained without your generous pledges today. See how that works? And, of course, how could I possibly forget? Who in their wildest dreams would have ever thought our choir would sing from the stage of Carnegie Hall? I mean, should, yes, but would? But someone imagined that long ago, and a whole bunch of people who didn't know they'd been waiting patiently jumped up and ready to go. Did you know you had been waiting patiently for this? So I want your help to finish this sermon. I've told some stories and gave some examples, but I want you to use this colorful piece of paper that you were given when you walked in. And on one side it says, this is what I'm grateful for at Mission Hills UCC. This is the things that we are. But on the other side, I want you to put your head in the clouds for a while and just imagine what's possible for our church, because you might just be the first person to see what the rest of us have been waiting for, waiting on you. So let's just take some time to do this, and later we'll come forward and put them in our front basket here.